Welcome to the Business Speak Podcast, where we take everything you need to know about being successful in business and make it easy to understand. Whether you're a longtime business owner, newer to this entrepreneur stuff, or hoping to run your own company in the future, you've come to the right place. Featuring your host, professional accountant and business guru, Mr. Chill. So relax and have some fun with us as we journey through Business Speak, the language of business, simplified.
So there's 7 ideas that I sent you. I know which one you want to start with, and it scares me because I don't know if I know anything about it. So maybe I have imposter syndrome. I don't know.
Well, maybe I can ask you one first because I'm actually really interested. Like I said, the biggest money mistakes one is the one that I would be really interested in hearing, because I feel like you deal with a lot of businesses and their finances specifically, and you probably see decisions that people have made. Is there anything that's really common that you see that businesses, like, they're just constantly falling into a little bit of a trap or making a wrong decision with something? I would be really interested to hear what you've seen.
Yeah, I was trying to think about that Top Gun. It was one of those things where I was like, I know lots about that. And then as soon as I was like, what would I say? I'm like, oh, mine's completely blank. Yeah. All of a sudden, I know absolutely nothing about what I do for a career. Well, so yeah, the biggest money mistakes small business owners make. See, I don't want this to become an accounting course because that's not exciting to anyone. And I don't care what accountants say. I don't even think it's exciting to accountants. Let's go talk spreadsheets. And it's like, hey,
I love spreadsheets.
I know, okay. But you're not going to have a conversation about them. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But just the fact you said that, that's probably a good sign. All right. So when I think about common mistakes, money mistakes that business owners make, I think running their business by their bank account is probably one that might catch a few different like side tangents. But there's so many times where like, oh, how much money do I have? Well, how much does my bank say I have right now? And that might seem like a logical way to run it. The problem is that doesn't account for what you need to pay tomorrow, or what you need to pay next week, or what you've already committed to buy the next 3 months, or the taxes you're going to have to pay at some point in the future. It's just looking at what you have to work with now. And if you spend everything you have there without factoring in what you already have to spend that isn't factored in there, then you're going to be in a bit of a financial problem. And so there's statements you can do. You can do cash flow forecasts. You can do spreadsheets that'll do a lot of cool like cash flow analysis. And I remember how fun I used to have when I was like, I told my wife, I'd be like, this is not going to be cool to anyone else but me. But I can predict with about 80% accuracy exactly to the penny what our bank account balance is going to be in 8 months from now. Oh, wow. And she was like, you need a life. Like, maybe, but I'm running our finances.
Well, look at what I've done. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you appreciate
You're prepared then.
So I feel like there's options out there for people to run their business by a lot more than just what they can see in their bank account at that moment.
Is there anyone that you would say is like the most helpful statement or the most helpful number to look at?
The way I would set it up would be probably in Excel. And what I would try to account for is what I know that I have coming out in the next, we'll say 90 days.
Okay.
And so once I can factor that in and I can see where my bank balance is going to be, then I'm like, okay, well, that's how much I have to work with. Now, there's a different way you could think about this, though. There's a way to run your business that's kind of growing some enthusiasm in the business world called Profit First. Okay. It's based on a book by a gentleman named Mike Maskowitz, or I probably just butchered his last name. Anyways.
I won't quote you on it.
Okay. Anyways, his idea is most business owners will pay all their expenses and then hope there's something left over for them at the end of the day. Okay. Whereas his suggestion is pay yourself first and then force yourself to run your business on what's left over.
Oh, okay.
And ironically, when you do it his way, you find a way to run your business on less.
Really?
But if you spend all your expenses first, you will rarely have enough left over to give yourself what you want. It would be kind of the same concept of, if I know I got to pay my tax bill in 12 months, I can either just consciously go, oh yeah, I'm just going to keep that money aside and I'm going to, I'll have enough. I'll just make sure I don't spend that much. Or you can literally set it aside in a separate bank account, and then it's there and then you don't touch it, and then you don't really miss it. You can still run your day-to-day stuff surprisingly with little effect, and yet you'll magically have the amount you need. But if you don't set it aside, your brain's like, oh, I have that to work with, even though you're telling yourself I don't, and you'll more than likely spend it.
Do you think it's just like a psychological thing?
I think it's very much a psychological thing. But again, it's the same reason why someone can make $2,000 a month or $20,000 a month, and the same person might always feel like they never have enough money.
Right.
It's not the money, it's the issue. It's their relationship with the money, or the way that they think about money. Because they'll find a way magically to live off of $2,000 the same way they could find a way to spend $20,000. So anyway, so that's one of the things that comes to mind is I'm going to run my business because based on what I see in my bank account every morning, which is better than nothing, but it doesn't really
it's good
factor.
to have cash, but there's a lot more.
It doesn't factor in future stuff. So that's one of the things that comes to my mind. That's a pitfall that I think a lot of people run into with money. Another one I think people run into is assuming it's going to be easier to get financing than it often is.
Oh, okay.
And so they're like, oh yeah, I've got really good credit and whatever, so I can go to the bank and they'll give me a $20,000 line of credit and they'll give me a $20,000 credit card and I can start my business no problem. But most of them don't work like that. And they'll be like, well, you have no history. I can't lend you anything because I have no proof or guarantee that you're going to actually be able to pay me if I lend you. And so I think people are sometimes surprised that they'll go to the bank thinking they're going to qualify for all of this funding they think they need to run their business, and they actually don't. So I as far as like ways around that, I think doing their homework helps. I think finding a different way to come up with cash flow until you have about 2 years of history behind you is really good. In a pinch, you could sign a personal guarantee with the bank. But I don't like encouraging people to do that. One reason people might incorporate it is to keep their personal life out of it.
Right.
And as soon as you sign that personal guarantee, it's like, you've given that bank a one-way ticket to your personal life. Right. And it's like, well, that's kind of why I incorporate it, is to keep them out of it. But
And so is that history they're looking for? You said about 2 years, like they want to see that you've been established as a business, that you've been running, that you have money kind of as a business rather than just a person walking off the street saying, I'm going to do something.
Correct. Okay. Now, depending on the type of business and depending on the relationship manager you have at the bank you work with, you might find one who's willing to take a bit of a chance if you have something. For example, you might be in a business where you might sign contracts ahead of time. Like I might have 3 contracts ready to go kicking off next week. And if you can show signed contracts to a banker, sometimes they'll look at that and be like, oh, okay, I know you don't have the money, I don't have the history, but these are valid signatures, these are valid contracts, pending anything weird. At least I have some comfort that you're going to be making some money and you could pay us back if we lend you something and whatever. So that can sometimes work, but I wouldn't bank on it.
Speaking of kind of securing funding, I guess one of the things that I thought of in terms of kind of mistakes we can make is that being in debt is bad. Because I think personally, like, you don't want to owe money to people. And I find that with small businesses that they are a little bit afraid to take on debt when they can secure the funding, obviously, like you're saying. But would you say it's bad to have your business in debt, or would you say that there is a good amount of debt to maybe have? Where do you stand on that debate?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I personally, as you alluded to, in my personal life, I hate debt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's necessary to get something more than a shack to put your family in, and something more than a beat up car to drive in Alberta winters or whatever. So like, I feel like it's a necessary thing in certain areas. But all those tempting things from the brick and from the furniture stores and the car dealerships that buy now and pay nothing for 2 years. You're like, man, does that sound
maybe not
tempting.
As good as
But then the day comes when you have to start paying it back and you're likely to forget about it, or there's always usually some reason that it's probably not good, or maybe you had the money then, but you're like, man, I don't have to pay it now. I'm going to go off to treat myself.
Right.
But then you may not have the money later.
Yeah.
So in my personal life, I'm like, I'll take debt when it's absolutely necessary to get something that is needful, but otherwise I hate it. You bring up a very valid point. Is there a reason, a good reason to have debt inside of a company? The short answer I would say is yes, but I think there's a lot of qualifiers that I would put on that. Okay. I mean, one good reason to have debt in a company, if you want to call it that, is because in a company, you'd be able to deduct the interest costs, right? So when you borrow money and you pay it back, you're kind of incurring two things. You're repaying principal and you're incurring the cost of the borrowing or interest expense. You can write off the interest expense in the corporation. That's something the Tax Act allows you to do. Whereas in most people's consumer debt in their personal life, they can't deduct that on a tax return anywhere. And lots of people ask, I've got this credit card debt or I've got this whatever, can I write it off? And I'm like, you're not going to like my answer. So that's, I think, a key difference. So in one sense, it could be seen, having debt inside a business I won't call it good necessarily in that factor, but it's at least usable. You can do something with what it's costing you. Mm-hmm. However, having extra deductions in a business that maybe already isn't profitable isn't going to help you on your taxes. Right? If you're already running your business at a loss, additional deductions are not going to change the tax results. You're not getting money back because you're more at a loss. Right. And that confuses people sometimes, especially in a business, because in a personal tax return, people are used to thinking, well, I didn't have any money or I made very little money, so I'm going to get money back. Ironically, a lot of cases in the personal taxes, that's true. But on a company side of things, when you don't have much money, it's not like it triggers a refund. Oh, the government's going to pay me because I made no money. That works in a personal, but it doesn't work in corporate. So having debt just for the sake of getting a write-off, if you already are not making any profitable money, won't help you. So that's a challenge. Sometimes a trap that you can fall into, and I saw this happen at one job I had many, many years ago, is the bank was willing to lend more and more to this particular company. And so they just like, hey, man, I'll just keep spending more and more. And so when I first worked with them for a while, I mean, they were like $200,000 line of credit. And at the time, I thought that was pretty ginormous. And so I'm like, look, we're trying to work with it. But they were spending so money. So we go back to the bank and say, what can you do? And like, well, we'll look at your stuff again. Guess what? You qualify for a $500,000 line of credit. Oh, wow. And the owner was like, this is amazing. I've got $300,000 more I can spend. Oh, no. So it only took like another year and we were up against the $500,000 limit. We went back to the bank and the bank's like, well, let me look at your finances and see what I can do. I wish they hadn't, but they said, yeah, actually, we'll qualify you for $1 million line of credit. And that was like the worst thing you could have told this owner, because like, now I got another $500,000 I can spend. I'm like, you were thinking about this all wrong. Eventually, you're going to have to pay this back. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So
not really free money.
Yeah. And so I think that's a pitfall people can fall into in that regard, is that the bank is willing to lend you maybe. I know that kind of contradicts what we talked about earlier, but I have seen it that way. If your receivables are strong or if it looks like you're showing good revenue, they might be willing to extend a line of credit, and you quickly find you're asking them to constantly increase that line of credit. And that can be a hole that's really hard to dig out of. So that's one I've seen come back to bite people on occasion, is that. So I don't know. That's kind of what I would, I guess to circle back to the answer to your question, is debt in a business good? It can be if it's used correctly, if it's used appropriately, but it can also quickly get out of hand and cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, on a related note, on my personal tax returns, I remember when I finished university and the student loan people was like, we can do this in a 5-year term, a 10-year term. I just stopped them right there and it's like, I want the longest you can do. And I'm like, that's like a 20-year term. I'm like, I don't care. And they're like, you realize how much interest you're going to pay on that? I'm like, I don't care. They're like, okay. And then they're thinking, didn't you go to school for accounting? Like, don't you understand how this works and you still want it? But in my head, I'm like, that's exactly why I want the longest term. Because most of your debt you can't write off, as we said, but student loans is one of the exceptions. So yeah, it might cost me more in interest, but I can deduct all that interest on my tax return. Whereas I could not deduct credit card debt or vehicle loan debt or my mortgage. And so I was like, if I had to pick between paying off student loans and almost anything else, I'm going to let the student loans run up the clock as much as possible because I can write that off. So similar idea.
So it sounds like it's a very case-by-case basis, and probably something that someone should talk to their accountant about before they incur a bunch of debt.
Their accountant would be good. If they have a significant other, even if they're not actively involved in their business venture, they don't want to be sleeping on the couch or something, they probably should discuss that with them. And it would probably be good to develop a good relationship with their bank. I mean, I bank with ATB, and I mean, it's not that they're any better or worse necessarily, but I've had the same relationship manager at my bank for about 6 years now, and they bend over backwards for me. If I need something, she will do whatever she can, and even when normally she'd have to say no, because she's worked with me so long, and I've never missed payments and never defaulted anything, and so if I need something, even if it's initially like we wouldn't normally do this, she will try to find a way to make it happen. And so building that relationship with your banker to open up every possible door and also find out what they are and aren't willing to do would be probably a good person to talk to also.
And how do you find someone like that at a bank? How do you build a relationship?
It's hard because there's so much turnover. I've been with this bank for 11 years, and the first 5 years I felt like I had a new relationship manager every 6 months. Hi, Corey, I'm your new relationship manager. What happened to the last person? I only heard another email from them 6 months ago. I pretty much saying the exact same thing. Yeah, they're not here anymore, but I'm here for the long haul. 6 months later, you get another email the same way, and it's like, do you guys know what long haul means?
Yeah, I think we have a different definition of that.
I don't think that word means what you think it means. So I don't know. That one's hard. Maybe you just luck out, or maybe you just proactively try to build a relationship. The one I have now kind of has advanced in the bank enough that she doesn't usually work with business owners my size anymore. But she sort of grandfathered me into her portfolio because she's been working with me so long. So again, it's probably never a bad thing to try and proactively create or build the relationship with your banker. And maybe even if there's turnover, maybe they'll take you with them to their new bank or whatever, and you can still maintain that kind of go to bat for you kind of relationship. So, yeah. Anything else that comes to your mind about cash flow management? It doesn't even have to be from a personal experience, but what do you imagine can sometimes happen in a business? What could you see going wrong from a cash flow perspective?
Something that I've heard come up a lot is making sure that you're getting paid for what you're doing. I know that a lot of different businesses kind of have different ways of collecting money. Like if you go to the grocery store, they're getting money from you right then. But in a lot of the services, maybe we're going to send you an invoice later, or maybe you do have a point of sale right there. But something that has come up a lot in service businesses is, you know, the advice like make sure you're getting paid, and I haven't really seen this go south at all, but I've heard from other people that that sometimes you don't get paid for the work if you don't have systems in place properly, especially if it is I come to you, I do a service, and I'll invoice you later, and there isn't that immediate transaction, that then you have this really high accounts receivable that looks like I'm making a lot of money, but none of it's coming in. And, you know, like, okay, well, it's just a week old. I'll just maybe send them a little email or something. But if you're not actually getting any of that money coming in, then it's going to be all the expenses going out. And I know you said at the beginning to not look at just your bank account, but if your bank account's never going up, there's a problem. And so I think it's really important to ensure that you have that system down of how am I actually going to get paid every time, and I'm not just seeing like, oh yeah, all these people owe me money because I'm working all the time, but is that money coming in? And I'm not really sure how you exactly enforce that if it's not happening. I hope people would pay you for your services, but I have found trying to make sure your invoices and your payments have those terms on it, that I expect this payment to be due in 10 days, immediately, 30 days, whatever it is that really works for your business or for that deal that you're making with people, to make sure that you guys are getting paid in a timely manner, so that you can then pay your expenses. And I think that hopefully it all goes well, and I've thankfully seen it go well in a lot of businesses that I've worked with and been around, but I've heard some stories of people of just not being able to collect, and then you're working for free, which is not what you sign up for when you start a business.
Yeah, and actually I'm glad you brought that topic up, because there's a few things that kind of triggers in my mind that might be worth talking about for a second. Mm-hmm. The first is going back to the concept of a bank. In some situations, it's like the business owner becomes an impromptu bank for his clients. So he's, and if it's strictly in a service-based business, it's not as hard, though it's still hard. But if I'm in a business where I'm incurring a bunch of supply expense on top of my time I expect to get reimbursed for, and then that client is taking 10, 30, 60, 90, half a year to pay, I've just gave that client interest-free financing, and I'm the one that has to incur that, right? So I might be paying interest on a line of credit to survive because my client who owed me money 3 months ago has not paid me, but I had to pay my subcontractors, I had to pay my employees, I had to pay myself, and that's got to come from somewhere, and it should have come from my client, but he didn't pay me yet, so it didn't. So that can get problematic. Another thing I've seen, and this is often true in the trades, particularly where a person goes into business because they're tired of working for somebody else, but they don't really want to run a business where they have employees. They just want it to be just the one-person show the whole time. As weird as this might sound, a lot of trade business owners I've seen that are just one-person operations, they're really bad at even invoicing their clients. So they will do work and work and work. I'm like, man, this is a great month. I had work going every day. But they don't make the time to actually bill their clients. And so, great, I'm glad you had work to do every single day this month. But your client hasn't paid you because you didn't even invoice them yet. And then it's hard to give an invoice to a client. Like, by the way, that was due 3 weeks ago.
Right.
Like, it's like you start the clock when they get the invoice, not if it's not like, you can't do that. And so that gets some people into trouble.
Well, and I think that's a really good point, and something else I've seen with a lot of people that have started businesses, whether it is a trade or whether it is kind of just a home-based, maybe kind of they've started with their crafts and they've gone out and started selling them and things like that. People that have kind of turned their hobby into a business and tried to make money off it. Something I've noticed is that people get really caught up on, I know how to do this thing, so I'm going to start a business doing this thing. But if you don't also know the business side, you need to find someone that can do that, or you need to learn. And I think people forget that step, that it's not just about doing the service really well or making the product really well, which is very important. You need to have something that people want. But if you don't know how to invoice, if you don't know how to manage the finances and all of that, and even just marketing, and if you don't know how to do the business side of it, I think you can find yourself in hot water really quick. And especially not even collecting, not even getting paid for anything, and then it's not really a business anymore. Yeah.
And I think some of that can also happen, be caused by what I'll call poor time management, or overloading yourself to the point where, in order to keep up with your business, you would need to work like an unsustainable amount of hours every single day. And maybe you think you're superhuman when you first start. You're like, oh, that's no problem. I'm working for myself. I can do that 12 hours a day. Yeah. I can do that 14 hours a day.
I don't need weekends.
Yeah, I don't need a life.
Yeah.
I don't need a life.
Yeah.
I don't need sleep. What's that? But that's not sustainable. And so sometimes it's not that they don't know how, can be, but sometimes it's just they don't literally have the time. They've overworked themselves to the point where their basic business functions are not happening because they haven't made time for the business side. And that goes back to what you said. And so sometimes it could be as simple as, let's hire an executive assistant, let's hire a secretary, let's hire an administrator person. If you really got to, you could, I don't remember what the terminology is, you'll probably know what I'm talking about in a second, but you can get someone who's like on contract, and sometimes even in another country, where they'll kind of be your
virtual assistant.
Virtual assistant, thank you. You can get a virtual assistant who can do some of the administrative side of your business for you. where you're not giving up any trade secrets and you're not like trusting someone else to interact with your clients, but you have someone on the back end keeping up with stuff that you probably dropped the ball on, right? So that can be a helpful thing for someone. But yeah, if I'm not even invoicing, I can't wonder why clients aren't paying me. You mentioned something else in your comments that were really good. You said about terms, right? Now, terms is tricky. I think some people, especially in service-based businesses, assume they have to give terms. And a lot of times, especially if you took like any kind of QuickBooks training, it's like every invoice is like 210 net 30, and you're like,
oh yeah,
okay. It's like, no, that's not how it has to be.
Yeah,
it's not like just because someone wants to do business with you have to give them terms. I mean, if you take that concept into context, I'd like to see what happened if you or I tried to walk into Walmart, walk out with $600 worth of stuff, and be like, "Are you going to pay?" "Oh no, I'm taking my 30 days."
Yeah.
You're not leaving the store until you've paid us. "Oh no, I'm getting 30 days, just like I give to my clients." It doesn't work like that, right? There's nothing wrong with you not extending terms. In fact, it would probably be a wise thing if you are going to extend any kind of significant terms that you do some kind of credit check on that client. And that there's sometimes a whole department in bigger companies that's their entire job. We're going to take on this new client. Our standard is to give them 60-day terms. But if we think that they're about to go bankrupt, or they've, we're the fourth person they've hired because they bill ditch every other person that they've done, we don't want to extend them terms either. Now, sometimes what people do that is really not relevant, it's not good unless they're going to actually stick with it, is giving discounts to encourage early payment. So you might have a rule where you're like, I normally extend 30-day terms to all my customers. But I also have this thing where if they pay within 10 days, I give them a 2% discount or whatever. That's really hard. And what I've sometimes seen on the other end is a penalty clause. This is due in 30 days. If it's not paid in 30 days, I charge 2% interest per month until it's paid. But what I've often seen is that turns into a scare tactic, not an actual process. And so they might not pay in 30 days, but they promise to pay in 40 days. And like, well, I don't want to scare away my client who now says they're going to pay, so I'm going to pretend I didn't threaten that interest charge at the end. And that can get out of hand as well. And if you threaten something that you don't follow through with, they're never going to be afraid of you again. So offering discounts for early payment or threatening penalties for late payment can work, but you have to have a system to support it. Otherwise, it'd be better not to offer it at all. And then again, as extending terms goes, you can. Many people do. But it's definitely not a requirement.
Right. Yeah. So kind of going off what you said about like even just checking the credit of someone before you extend terms. Say you came across a client that requested some work from you, and you knew they had a history of not paying 1 out of 5 times, but you really want to make money. That's your job, to make money. What would you do in that scenario? Is it worth the risk to say, well, I need work, so hopefully I'm the 1 in 4 that they pay, or would you say, you know what, I'm going to only work with people that I know are going to pay me?
Yeah, that's a really good, hard question.
And maybe you don't have an answer, but
I have 2 thoughts. I don't have the right answer to probably anything, but I just have rambling thoughts that maybe are worth to someone. My first thought is you can choose. This is more common in my industry as an accountant or in a legal, like a law firm, but you can choose to work off like a retainer concept. If I have a client that I really want to work with for a variety of other reasons, but I am really concerned about getting paid, I could say, all right, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I will work with you, but I'm going to need $3,000 up front. And then you get paid up front. You work off the retainer until the services you've provided have eaten up their retainer, and then you can choose to take a chance on them or ask for another retainer. So if there's really someone you want to work with, but you are very concerned about getting paid, the retainer option could work. It's no problem. It's not a legal issue to do that. Although you do have to understand that if you take money ahead of time and then you fail to deliver on the promised services, you can open yourself up to some legal trouble.
Right.
But as long as that's not the case, then that could be a way around it. But one of the hardest words for any business owner to say, especially a new business owner, is the word no. And when you know that you got to put food on your table,
Yeah.
and this Mr. or Mrs. client says that they want to work with you, I don't care how badly you need that money. If your spidey senses tell you that's probably not going to be a good thing to do, you got to say no to some clients.
Mm-hmm.
And when you know you need the money, saying no to a client, even a horrible one, is a hard thing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't have the luxury of saying no. But usually that client that has trouble paying you, they're also going to be a problem client in many other aspects too.
Yeah.
They're going to be the 20% that take up to 80% of your time. Yeah. And you're going to, in hindsight, wish that you hadn't, it was not worth it. So, but yeah, getting to that point where you're like, I need this,
Yeah.
but I've got to say no because I realize in the long run that's what I need to do. That's hard.
Yeah.
But it's important skill. And ironically, I find if people can muster up the I'm going to call it the courage to say no to a client they really need from a cash flow perspective, what they would find if they were consistent is they actually get more people that want to work with them, not less. Because the reputation will spread that I don't work with just anyone. Mm-hmm. If you want to work with me, you got to do A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes almost like a exclusive club kind of thing. And it's almost like a supply and demand thing. Enough people want to work with you, but I won't choose everyone. Mm. And you can actually do better that way in some cases if you approach it correctly by being picky on who you take. So it can work in your favor, even though at the time you're like, saying no is probably the stupidest decision ever, but I'm going to do it anyways and just trust it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of like you said earlier with the terms, like if you're putting a punishment in place that you don't follow through with, then it doesn't mean anything. And so if you're setting like a price, or if you're setting something up for your business but you're not following through with it, you're almost training people that it's arbitrary, you know. And so yeah, like you're saying, if you are setting those boundaries and saying, I work with people that pay me, and, you know, maybe don't try to wheel you down with discounts or whatever it is. If you're saying this is what my services are worth and I expect to be paid and I expect to work with people that will pay me, that's you following through with what you're saying. I think people do notice that, and word does spread that like this is the place where they do the work that they say they're going to do. I think there's huge value in people knowing that what you say is what you get. You know, what you say is going to happen, and it's going to be this price, and that then it goes both ways, right? It's you're going to pay me, but I'm going to make sure that the work is up to your standard. And there's huge trust there, and you build that relationship, which is way more important than just trying to scrounge around and get any little job you can that may or may not pay you because I need food tonight. Mm-hmm. But it's that long view of it, that building that clientele that you can work with and have that long-lasting relationship with, that are then going to go tell people, like, this is the person you need to work with.
Yeah, and you actually alluded to another thing that I think is a common pitfall. I won't call it a common cash pitfall, though I think it will indirectly affect that. But the concept you said of like charging what you're worth, right? Mm. So this is a common scenario. I'm a new business owner. You talked about before we hit record, or I don't know how I was going to look at this thing, so whatever. But you mentioned the concept of imposter syndrome, mm-hmm. right? So based on you explaining what that means to me, I would say, okay, well, you know, yesterday I was an oil field worker. Today I'm telling people that I'm a bookkeeper, but I don't know if I really feel like I'm a very good bookkeeper. I've only taken a couple courses, and I've only worked with like 3 clients before. And so I'm going to use a ridiculous, I'm going to charge $10 an hour. And I mean, I'm going to get a lot of business, mm-hmm. maybe, because people, $10 an hour. What a steal.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I'm going to go to that person, whatever. But what that person will quickly realize is that they aren't really making any money at that rate. But B, they actually do their clients a disservice, because at some point they're going to gain more confidence and they're going to want to raise their rates. Mm. But the clients have only really came to them because they had low rates. That's the reason. They didn't come there because you were the best. They came there because you were the cheapest. So as soon as you're no longer the cheapest, they're often not going to be loyal anymore. Mm-hmm. And you might send them a confusing message. I've been with you for 5 years. Why are you all of a sudden raising my rates? Well, I'm actually now charging what I should have charged you 5 years ago. That's a very weird, awkward conversation to have.
Yeah.
But I so often, I know I probably should charge $100 an hour, but I'm so new. I have no experience. I need to get clients, and they're not wanting to pay $100 an hour, but I know lots are willing to pay 20. So I'm going to charge 20 for now, and we'll raise it as we go. Common. I'm not sure it's best approach though.
Yeah, I think I would include that into like a cash or money pitfall that people fall into, because if you're constantly feeling like you're working to the max, you're working those 12-hour days because you're the only person doing it, but you're not making any money because everything that's coming in is only covering your expenses, then I don't think you're really charging what you're worth and what your services or your goods are worth. I think that there's some change that needs to be made there.
Yeah. You actually reminded me of another one that kind of triggers from that too, is sometimes what I'll see is people are in business for themselves because they were an employee and maybe they worked out an agreement with their former employer that they're going to switch to being a contractor. As I see happen a lot.
Oh yeah, I've seen that a lot too.
But they won't change what they're charging. Well, they were they were paying me $35 an hour as an employee. That's pretty good. And I want to keep working for them, so I'll just switch to being a contractor because now I have all these things I can write off. And I'll still just charge them the same rate. Yeah, well, you have all these things that you can write off because you have all these things you didn't have to pay for before. Now that you're your own business owner, guess what? You don't have health insurance coverage. Now you got to pay an accountant. Now you got to pay a bookkeeper. Now you got to pay for insurance you probably didn't have before, and WCB coverage, and you don't get vacation anymore. And there's a reason that you would charge more as a contractor than you would as an employee, but so many people don't really factor that in. And so they might have been making okay money when they didn't have all these extra expenses. But they try to make the same money in a contractor environment running their own business, and they quickly realize there's not nearly as much left over for me as I thought. What's going on? I'm making the same amount. Yeah. But yeah, so that's something else I can sometimes see.
For sure.
I don't know. I know there was one of these topics that you mentioned that intrigued you. Productivity hacks that actually work and the ones that actually don't. Yeah. What comes to your mind when you think of that topic?
Productivity is something I think about a lot, kind of just in my personal life, because I feel this weight to always be doing something good with my time, which is maybe not the best way to live. But I've in a business sense too, I've worked in a lot of places that just like really push like being the best, most efficient, productive place. So it's something that's really weighed a lot in my experience in my career so far. But I was thinking about, what's something that really has worked for me personally and something that really hasn't. And I know that it's not the same for everyone. Something that I think is really important is that if you're looking at your personal productivity, it is personal. And I think there are a lot of methods out there that people push and say, this is the one, this is how you're going to accomplish the most in your life, this is how you're going to get something done. And I think it's okay to say maybe that one doesn't work for me because of XYZ. So for me personally, I guess I'll start with something that like doesn't work for me. Is there's a lot of methods about like blocking out your day and timing things and saying, I have this much time for this and this much time for this, and kind of scheduling out your whole day. And I've tried that before. And that one was really hard for me because I felt like I was constantly failing. I felt like I wasn't good at keeping within the time that I had like allotted to something, or like life changes so quickly. And so if from 1 to 2 is I am going to work on this part of my business, I'm going to work on this project, and if something comes up during that hour, well, that's the only time of the day that I put that task in. Now I can't do it today, and now I'm stressed because I didn't get to it. And I didn't find a lot of flexibility in it. I found that I just constantly felt like I was failing and I wasn't doing enough, even though I'd wake up in the morning and my whole day would be filled with things that I was going to do. And at the end of the day, I would just notice all the things that I didn't get done, or how I had to change the whole schedule halfway through the day. And it just made me feel so bad about myself. And I don't think that that's the point of any of them. I don't think you should ever feel bad at the end of the day if you're trying to do something good.
It kind of reminds me of the concept of why a lot of people say they hate setting goals.
Yes.
I don't want to set a goal because
Yeah.
I don't want to set a goal, not meet it, and feel like a failure.
Yeah,
You kind
I
of
hear that
alluding
a
to
ton. Yeah, and I've definitely felt that in my life too. That like it I think it's really easy to just feel like you're failing all the time in all aspects, because we set goals. There's things we want to accomplish, but I think we really focus on the things that we're not getting done, and the goal that we don't achieve. But something that I have found that really works, and this is kind of a very specific example, but I really like lists. And I know that lists also can be really hard for people. They can find it really overwhelming or really tedious to keep a list. But what I do is I just have a running list of everything that I need to get done, because my brain cannot handle remembering every single little thing I need to do. Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to.
Yeah.
The brain was never designed to do that. So you're on the right track.
Yes, and there's so much going on that, yeah, you shouldn't have to keep it all up there. And so as soon as something comes to me that I need to do, it gets added to the bottom of the list. And then every day I wake up and I just start at the top. And obviously there are some time sensitive things and some appointments that you'll have that you can't change, that will be that scheduled part of your day, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, I've got 8 hours a day today to work. What am I going to do? And I think that what am I going to do today can be really paralyzing for people as well, to say, I have all these things, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so you can have a list, and it can also still be paralyzing to say, I have 10 things, which one's the best, which one's the most important.
So follow up with what you're going to say, because you having a list by itself does not help you know what you're going to tackle, what order you're going to tackle in, how many things on your list you're going to try and get done that day. So there's got to be more to this list.
There is more to it. So the first step is to just get it all down. You don't want to be forgetting things. The second part is to just start at the top. One of my favorite sayings is, all I have to do right now is. And I actually learned this when I was a full-time volunteer with my church. They had this book on stress and being overwhelmed. And the one thing I took away from it, and this was years ago, and it still sticks with me, is all I have to do right now is. And then you fill in the blank, and that is the top of my list. All I have to do right now is write this report. And I don't even think about all the rest on there. I don't look at it. I'm not planning for, when am I going to get to number 5? When am I going to get through this many things? But all I have to do right now is this. And you just work on it. And then once that's done, you cross it off and you move on to the next. And there's a lot of momentum that can be gained by just doing something. And if you're working through the day and you realize, you know what, I really, really want to do this one thing, or something does become time sensitive, you can jump around on the list. It's not like hard and fast. You cannot go anywhere else. But kind of having a little bit of an order to it and just saying, all I have to do right now is this one, and I'll get to these later, has helped me a ton in saying, I'm just going to keep moving, and I'm just going to do one thing, and eventually by the time you get to the end of the day, you can look and you can see all the things that you've crossed off. And I think having that positive outlook, to go back to what we were saying earlier of like, I don't want to set goals because I'm just going to fail at them, and I don't want to schedule my whole day because it's going to get moved around and I'm going to feel like a failure. I'm going to be able to see all those things that I've crossed off and what I got done. And some days it's going to be 2 things. Some days it's going to be 10. That depends on what size they are. But I think it's really important to just focus on one thing and just work through it until it's done. Because if you're also just trying to do everything, you're not going to get any of them done. You're going to have 5 things halfway through, and still at the end of the day, you're not going to cross them off.
So what do you do then? Because I imagine this happens to you, although maybe you're just like Super Michelle. I don't know. You're like, not all superheroes wear capes. But I imagine it would be a common thing for many people to have a list and to purposely go through and pick off the ones that are like easy wins, and constantly keep procrastinating the ones that scare you, or the ones that are hard, or the ones that require more time, or the ones that require more thought. And they'll be on your list, but there's other quick, easier ones that you'll always just manage to keep doing first and never quite get around to the harder ones. How do you deal with that? Because you must experience that to some degree.
Oh, I definitely do. And sometimes I'll get to my list, like I'll look at the beginning of the day, and that first one on the list is one of those things that I don't want to do.
You're like,
and you're like, oh no, what else can I do? I think I need to have a snack again, or I need to, you find a lot of different things. And I think I kind of have two answers to it, and it goes down to you knowing yourself. Because for me, if I allow myself to start doing the other easy wins, I'm never going to go back to that big one. I will get sucked in to little wins and the little things, and I will never circle back. And so I need to force myself to say, all I have to do right now is this one task. And if it takes me all day, that's fine, but this is what I need to do. And then I get to do all of those other things later.
So you're really good at forcing yourself to just dig deep and just do the one thing.
Yes, delayed gratification, I think, is something I'm very good at. So again, this doesn't work for everyone, but if you find that, you know, having that like carrot at the end works for you, forcing yourself to just do that big task is going to help you be more productive, because you're going to be so excited when you get to the little ones and the easy things. And to just cross that off the top and be able to move down is something that for me really helps me keep going. But I also know that for some people that's not a motivating factor. To say, okay, I get to do all those things later is really hard, because they do get so paralyzed with that big task. So if you find that you just need something to get yourself going, then do a couple of those little tasks, but get yourself moving. If you find yourself being stuck in a rut, the best way to get out of it is to just move forward. And so I think it just comes down to knowing yourself and knowing what works for you.
Have you said that you like lists. Have you always been a list person, or is that something you learned about yourself over the years?
I think I've always been a list person.
Okay.
I think that's like in my DNA. Yeah. I'm a very orderly person. Yeah.
And I imagine there's some satisfaction, maybe even a lot, in just the act of checking it off.
Yeah, 100%.
Like sometimes I remember like 5 or 6 years ago, it's like, okay, it's time for me to run payroll today. I'm never going to forget, but it's like 3 minutes before I do it, I'm like, I'm going to put it on a to-do list, just so in about 12 minutes, I can cross it off my to-do list.
Yeah,
it's like
a little,
weirdly satisfying.
A little hit of dopamine crossing it off. And I have talked to some people where that doesn't happen for them, that is not the same reaction. And I think that's like going back to the very beginning of like, there are so many different methods of being productive, and, you know, even goal setting. There's a lot of different methods out there. And I think it's okay to say, this one's not working for me, I'm going to try another one. But totally throwing it out the window and being like, well, I'm never going to set a goal, I'm never going to accomplish anything, I don't need to get more productive with my time because this isn't working, I think is also really hard. And so it is a learning curve to figure out what method is going to work for you exactly, but be okay with trying different things. I think if somebody's really hasn't found it yet, there's a lot of different ways to make it work.
You made me think of two different things while you were talking about your productivity hacking with your lists. One of them was, and I don't know if it's directly related, but it's the same topic. Full disclosure, hopefully this isn't TMI. My phone has often been the reason that I don't finish in the washroom in 5 minutes, but it will often take me between 10 and 30 minutes. And my wife will be like, are you okay? Mm-hmm. No, I'm good. Just got to finish this level. I mean, I just got to, like, whatever. Yeah. Right? And so I was finding myself wondering, you know, if I wasn't distracted, could I have more productive time in a day? Mm. And so this might sound strange, but I started setting a timer when I go into the washroom and start out with 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, I don't care what has happened. At the end of 10 minutes, I am forcing myself to call it done. And if I have to go back to the bathroom 20 minutes later and try again, that's fine. So I started with that. And then I think I'm up right now to about a 5-minute timer. And what I found is that magically, my body can seem to do what it needs to do in 5 minutes, whereas it used to take me 30. And so I guess where I'm getting with that is, I think if we look, there's probably some, if not a lot, of wasted time in a day. Now that's a silly example, time in the washroom. But another one might be, I don't have any time in my evenings, they're all full. Mm-hmm. But your typical person, what do they do in their evenings? Maybe, especially if they don't have little kids running around, they're probably binge watching something on Netflix or whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't have time to do that. Well, let's look at how you used your time last night. You think if maybe you didn't spend 3 hours watching your Netflix show, that you might have had more time to do this more productive thing. And it's not that you need to spend every minute of your day being productive.
Exactly, yeah.
But I'm sure the average person that feels like I have no time,
Mm-hmm.
they might find that they have time for the things they want to be doing.
Yeah.
And that might be eating into the time to do the things they need to be doing.
Well, that's another part of it, is that breaks are really important, and having time to let your mind rest, to do something that's just purely fun. I think we forget that fun is really important, and we do want to fill every second of our day, and then at the end, like, oh, I watched Netflix for so long today. Like, maybe you needed that today, and that's okay. But that's actually something I tried for a while too, was like setting a timer for my break time, and saying, okay, I've done so many tasks today, I just need a little bit of break. I'm going to scroll on social media for a little bit, or whatever it is. Kind of a comment you made a long time ago on sort of cash and stuff, of like, we just use the amount of space that we're given. Like you were talking about expenses, you know, we're always going to fill whatever we're given. I think we're just going to use it all up. And so if we don't have an end time to that break, we're going to just keep going, because we want to be in that. We want to, you know, be mind melting, or we want to be doing whatever it is that we're doing. And so I think that there is a lot of, it's a psychological change to say, oh, I get this break for 10 minutes. And I think it makes it a little more special too, when you're like, this is how much time I have. It's almost like making your break a little productive, like a little productive fun, I guess, or a little productive, you know, whatever you're doing. But yeah, I think the natural state of us is to just use as much as we can. But if you set that timer and you say, you know what, I'm gonna do my show for this long today, I'm gonna do one episode tonight, or whatever it is, kind of setting that limit on yourself, and then jumping back into the other things that you should be doing, or that will help you reach your goal or your work or whatever it is that you're doing. But it is important to take those breaks for sure.
So let's talk about that, because I have a really weird analogy for that. Hopefully I'm not the only one that's ever thought this way. In hindsight, I'm like, man, are you dumb, Corey? But I don't mind explaining how I'm dumb.
I'm really curious
So,
what this is.
If you've ever had this thought, and don't pursue it if you have, but if you've ever had this thought, I'm following a recipe, and the recipe says if I stick this cake in the oven at 350 degrees, it's going to take 30 minutes. So if I double the temperature, then I could cut the time in half, and I'll have accomplished the same thing in a lot less time.
Have you done this?
I have.
Okay.
The sad part is I've done it on more than once.
Oh, no.
But sometimes I get this impatient idea in my head that if I double the temperature of my recipe, then it's going to take half as much time to cook. Now, what does that have to do with what we were talking about? Well, I have seen, and I've been there, sometimes I still find myself getting caught in this mental trap. Well, if working 8 hours in a day is good, obviously working 12 hours a day is better. Or, man, you know, if I worked 16-hour days, I could get the same amount work done in 3 days that I'd normally take 5 to do. It doesn't work like that. I've had some employees come to me sometimes throughout the years and be like, hey, Corey, instead of working this 5 days a week, 8-hour days, can I go down to working 3 or 4 days a week and just work 10 to 12 hours a day? I'm like, well, theoretically you could, and theoretically you're right, you'd be putting the same amount of hours in. But after so many hours, your return gets diminished greatly. And working 10 hours a day is not necessarily going to help you be more productive than working 8 hours a day. In fact, you might be less, right? So that's where I was going with that analogy is a business owner pitfall might be, I want some time off, but I have so much to do. So if I just work 12 or 14-hour days, then I can afford to take a day or two off. Thinking, well, I'll have the same amount of work time, so clearly I'll be the same productivity level.
Yeah.
And you're just not.
No, not at all. And I think we do kind of get into that trap of like hours equals amount of work output. And it's not true. No. It's really not. There's a diminishing value of what I'm going to put out. Like, it is not going to be as good. I'm going to take way longer to get things done if I'm past my 8 hours a day, or your mind's just going to give up at a certain point, and you're going to be kind of wasting that time, you know. And I think that's something that it looks like productivity. It looks like working. It's a lot more being busy or just kind of filling that time. And it's important to remember that we are not machines. You know, even machines need to have maintenance. Like we work so hard to make sure that our cars run efficiently, and you know, anything that we've built, we're like, oh, this can be perfect. I'll just keep tinkering at it. But it needs maintenance. It needs work, and we also need that. And ours looks like resting. Ours looks like taking
Self-care.
time off, and taking time with family. You know, I think going back to kind of just new business owners and being afraid to say no as well, like it's not going to be helpful to work 24 hours a day. Why do you own your own business? It's probably to have a little bit more control over your life. And if you are just pushing yourself to the absolute limit, I don't think that you're getting out of it what you actually wanted, because you're going to be sacrificing a lot of your quality of life, and maybe that time with your family, the time doing your hobbies, the time developing yourself personally, whatever it is outside of work, that I think is actually the motivating factor for a lot of people in starting businesses and owning their own businesses.
Look at me, I'm so free.
Yeah.
Never worked more in my life, but I'm so free.
Right? Like never put my phone down, never turn it off. And so it's that idea of like busy doesn't mean productive. And going back to my thing with the list, like if your list is 80 things long, like it doesn't mean that you're better or worse than anyone else. It just means that you have a different list. And I think that we can really just think, oh, if I'm doing something, I'm being productive. But it is being smart about how you use your time as well.
Yeah, let's go back to that concept, because I want to go back to your listing, because this is another thing I could imagine being a common pitfall for somebody. Not even just using the list method, just using kind of a variety of methods. But it would be a common thing. And I imagine if someone said, have you ever felt like all you do is go around putting out fires? Yeah, 98% of business owners would be like, that's describes my whole life, right?
Yes.
So you can spend a lot of time reacting, or you can spend some time proactive and spend a lot less time reactive. And so sometimes you could save yourself a lot of time down the road by taking time to do something that isn't currently urgent. It doesn't feel like I have to do it now, so I don't. But if I took the time to do it now, it'll actually cost me less time later on.
Oh, 100%. And to kind of go back to like why I feel like just a straight list that you're just working through is really important, is because you're going to work on those things eventually. I think if you're always trying to prioritize and say, oh, well, this thing needs to get done right now, you're never going to get to those things that actually have a lot longer return. And something that I've found is that businesses hesitate in kind of creating processes, or they do kind of just they don't take the time to make sure their foundation is there, and then they are always just trying to fight fires and make things work. Whereas if you take the time to write down, how does this process actually work? How am I supposed to be accomplishing this? And being able to kind of hand that to an employee and say, this is actually what we should be doing, and then just trusting them with it, instead of you having to constantly say, okay, now do this. Okay, now do this. Oh, in this scenario, do this. And you're like kind of micromanaging at that point, because you just need to tell everyone what to do. But if you take the time to really create those processes and procedure for everyone to have, to say, this is how the business should be operating, which it is if you don't have one as a business, if you don't have any documentation of how you should be operating as a business, it's a massive task to create all of that. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say you can do that in a day. I've been brought on to companies specifically to do that. That's been my whole job, is to make that for them. And it's been, months long process creating those things. However, every single employee you have that comes on after, you can hand them a binder and they can read it and they understand what they're supposed to do, instead of you fighting fires constantly and wondering why no one is doing their job. We need to be able to set those expectations for them. And this is a totally different topic that I'm now on in terms of running a business and everything. But I think it is true that there are a lot of specific tasks that right now do not seem important. They seem like they're too big to kind of, waste time on right now. But in the long run, it's going to change your whole life, and it's going to set you up for a lot more productive time in the future, because you can then sit down and say, what am I going to do today? And you can answer that question, not everyone around you coming to you and saying, I need help.
So I think that's one reason the way you use your list method probably works brilliantly, is because you probably don't. Oh, that one's hard. Skip it.
Yeah.
Oh, that one doesn't look fun. Skip it. Oh, that one I could do. I want to do that one. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Like, you're attacking them in whatever order they come. Yeah. And if you love it, great. And if you're like, crap, I was hoping I didn't get to that, you're still going to do that one that day anyways.
Yeah.
And that would work well. But if you had a list where you're every day, you're like prioritizing it based on what you felt was urgent or what you wanted to work on, that could get scary in a hurry.
Yeah. I think those 2 days are going to look really different if I just decided whatever I wanted to do that day versus, okay, what's next on my list because I agreed to do this a few days ago. Or, you know, it's two very different days, and I think that the end result can kind of feel the same, like I did something today, but what was the result of what I did going forward? You know, what is this task really accomplishing for us all?
Yeah. I was going to say one other thing that I found for this topic of productivity, and it kind of goes back to something we said. We talked about timing the breaks. I've also found timing my work time is helpful too.
Really?
So now, full disclosure, 3 years ago when I turned 40, my body basically said, I now hate you. At least that's what it feels like. And so everything that I've probably been doing wrong my entire life all came back to haunt me as of about 3 years ago. And so I come to work every day. I work at a pretty sedentary job, sitting at a desk all day. And every day I'm constantly battling neck, shoulder, and back pain from 15 to 20 years of horrible posture, sitting at a screen for way too many hours in a day, especially during a tax season. So in full disclosure, this has probably come about because of survival. But I have found when I go to work now and I'm like, okay, I'm going to work now, I set my timer for about 45 minutes. And then I'm all in for that 45 minutes. But when that timer goes off, I force myself to take a break. Even if I wouldn't normally, even if I'm right in the middle of something, I will force myself to get up, even if all I do is walk around the office for 2 minutes, stretch my neck, stretch my back, go back again. But I forced myself to time my work time too. Like I said, full disclosure, part of it's just to survive physically because my body hates me now. But surprisingly, I've actually found myself getting more done in a day by timing my work time, not just my break time.
And do you think that's... okay, two questions. I guess my first question is, do you have that timer visible to you, or is it like you've set it and put it off? Like you don't really know, like it's counting down. Like you obviously know it's counting down.
I'll set my phone and then I just put it away and don't look at it again.
Okay, because I was gonna ask, like, is that kind of... do you think it's motivating because it could go off at any second, or like, why do you think that helps you?
I don't know, but what I thought you were going to ask me is like, if you've ever played a game where you have a timer which kind of ticks slowly, and then the closer you get to the end of the timer, it ticks faster and faster and faster. What I find happens to me is that last like 10 seconds, I'm like, I might as well not even be playing.
Right.
Because my brain's just like, time. Like I can't even do anything. Right. So I think if I was watching a clock and I'm like,
you'd be way slower.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
1 minute.
Yeah.
Half a minute. Like that entire last 5 minutes.
You at the end of the day when you see like it's like 4:59 on your computer and you're like, it's almost 5. Yeah.
So I think if I was looking at the timer, I think it would give me that almost like paralyzing effect.
Right.
To answer your question, I think the main reason it helps me be more productive is because I'm going to go back to another kind of analogy. When I went to university, I already was married with 2 kids.
Wow.
We had our 3rd child the week of midterms one year. Like literally the week of midterms, I was like watching my phone, waiting for it to go off. I told my professor, if this goes off, I love this class, but I have to go. It means my wife's in labor.
Yeah.
And he's like, are you okay to take your test? I'm like, I'm okay to take it. I just need you to know that if this goes off, I'm out of here. Right? Anyways, what I found...
Did you make it through the class?
I did.
Okay, good.
What I found was I actually had one of the highest grades in my graduating class. And it's not because I was smarter. I definitely was not. But I found that because I had all these other responsibilities, that when I was at school, I was all in. I wasn't at school to like be social. I wasn't in school to be the party crowd. I wasn't in school to goof off. I was like, I have 1 hour.
Right.
If I don't focus on this 1 hour, this ain't happening later. So I'm going to get it done now or it ain't getting done at all. And I found that I was actually more productive during my school time because I had to be. So I think for me, and maybe this won't work for most people, but for me, timing my work times is a situation where like, if I just only got 8 hours, well, I'll kind of half work. I'll kind of mostly work. But if I know I got 45 minutes and then I need to take a break, it's like I'm all in for that 45 minutes because I have to be. So I don't know. That's the best answer I could give you, I think.
No, I think that makes a ton of sense because then you're not splitting your brain. You're not thinking about other things while you're trying to work. This is my work time, which I'm hoping is similar. Then you close out your work and then you're all in at home or you're all
correct.
In, wherever you are. I think that probably helps a lot because then you're not thinking about work while you're doing family time because you have your work time later, and you're not thinking about your family while you're doing work time because this is work time and I'm going to have family time later. I think that sounds like it would be really helpful.
Again, that may not work for everyone. So anything else you want to talk about this topic? I wouldn't mind exploring one more. I don't know which one yet, but I wouldn't mind exploring one more.
No, I'm good to try another one,
All right. Thinking of Braden over there being like, guys, wrap it up. I want to go home.
Me too.
We could have so much fun talking about AI, even though I don't really know much about it.
I don't really know anything about AI either.
One of the ones here that was interesting, but I don't know where it would go. Lessons I wish I knew before starting a business. Now, we've probably touched at least indirectly on some of these already when we've talked about cash flow and time management. But for me, it would either be that one or biggest myths about running a business, common misconceptions. I would think one of those two might be a fun one to kind of end on. Do you have a preference? Any one of those speak to you more than the other?
I don't think I have a preference. No, that's not helpful, but you know what?
And these two technically could be kind of two parts of the same coin.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Maybe just, things that you've kind of experienced in running a business. I don't know.
Well, we don't have to talk about a specific business if you don't want to, though. I guess if you want a nice plug-in for Mitch's carpet cleaning business, this would be the time to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you heard things before you started a business. You've worked on a lot of others. But in helping Mitch, like the two of you kind of tackling his together, is there anything you either your friends were telling you or you'd heard that now that you're knee deep into it, you're like, that is so not true. That was so false, or I don't know. Is there anything that comes to your mind if you think of that kind of situation?
Yeah. I have a couple things that we've definitely heard a lot. So my husband started a carpet cleaning business, and before he started it, we talked a lot about why did he want to start the business? What was the goal with it? And it is to provide for our family. That's what we want out of it at the end of the day. And as he got more into running the business and meeting a lot more people, especially through kind of networking and just being out in the community, he's met a lot of entrepreneurs as well. And a lot of the advice that he's gotten is, you need to do this to grow. And it's almost every piece of advice he's gotten is about growing his business. And I don't think that growth is a bad thing. I'm going to start this right now. Because when you start a business, it's obviously going to be small. It's probably not going to be exactly where you want it to be. But a lot of the advice that he got was, oh, the next thing you're going to want to do is employees. Oh, you're going to want a second van. You're going to want, there was a lot of really pushing him to kind of create the big carpet cleaning like empire of Edmonton, right? And overtake, I shall be remain nameless, other large sort of corporations in Edmonton that run a lot of vans. And he got really stressed about that, thinking, okay, well, I need to be the biggest. I need to be $1 million company in so many years. I need to have all these employees. I need to, how am I going to get another van? How am I going to train in? And something that we've come to realize is that doesn't have to be your goal. That being the biggest and the best at whatever you're in doesn't actually have to be your goal. It can be if that is what you want. If you really want to have a giant corporation and have multiple locations and different branches, and that's what you're trying to do and that's what you're trying to build, that's wonderful and all the power to you. And I'm not speaking to those people. I think that something that we've come to realize is that there can be a smaller goal and a smaller ceiling that you're aspiring to, and that's okay. I think that's the part that I've learned, is that's okay to say, I don't actually want that. Because if, like, our goal is to provide for our family, we don't actually need 7 vans running in Edmonton and, an office space and all this. We don't need that to provide for our family. We don't live in such a manner that we need, that big of a company to support us. That would be amazing, but that's not what we need. Nor is that something that my husband wants to run. That's not really something he doesn't find it empowering to have employees and to be able to have other people running his business. He really likes what he does. He likes being the one doing the labor of it. And so I think that's the biggest thing that I never heard before starting a business was, it's okay to only shoot so high, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm curious, who were, not names, but situations, the people that kept telling you, this is what you need to do, and here's how you need to grow, and you got to focus on grow. Were they talking from experience, or were they talking about third-party hearsay they were just passing on to?
It's a lot of business coaches was where that kind of came from, and not in like a I'm their client business coach kind of scenario, but it was a lot of people who have started businesses themselves, a lot of business coaches, but I would say a lot of people that haven't actually really done that themselves, that were saying that was sort of the next step, I guess, if that makes sense. Like a lot of other small business, single entrepreneurs saying, oh, this is how you get big, was a lot of where that came from, and not necessarily people who had actually gotten big.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
And so that actually leads me to sort of something else that came up that was something that we've kind of learned through this is there are a lot of networking groups right now, and for some businesses a networking group is really, really helpful, and sort of being in a networking group for a really long time can be helpful, but we also found that maybe there are certain industries that don't really fit in that, or maybe the person you need to meet is not really in that networking group, which is something also my husband got told a lot, was that you need to join this group, you need to I don't know, you need to join BNI, you need to join BX, you need to join all of these things, because that's how you're gonna find people. And my husband did, he's tried quite a few of them. He joined one of them and was in it for about a year, and he actually did find someone who he's created an amazing partnership with. He met them on the first day when he was there for free as a visitor, and then he ended up joining and not really finding as strong of a partnership with anyone else after that, and that was something that after a year he had to realize, you know what, it's not actually working for me. That's not where I'm going to find my partners. That's not where I'm going to find the people that I work with, because being a carpet cleaner is a lot more trades based than a lot of networking meetings kind of people that go there are not necessarily in the trades. And so it's kind of a specific sort of people that you're trying to partner with. And it was a bit of a hard thing for him to say out loud that, you know what, I don't actually need this anymore. I don't want to continue with this, because he just kept hearing like, no, you need this. This is where you're going to meet people. And I do agree that it's a lot about who you know. Like, that is totally true, that nowadays it is about who you know. But I think it's okay to say, like, that's not how I'm going to meet that person, that there is something else that works for my business specifically. And on top of that, he's been asked to come and visit a lot of other ones, and he's sort of started saying no because they take up a lot of time. They're maybe far for travel, which actually eats into the time that he can be doing the things that make him
generating
money.
activities.
Exactly. Yeah. And so going back to like not wanting to say no as a new business owner, like he jumped on a lot of opportunities to try to get into those meetings and meet people, but being realistic with yourself and saying, is this actually getting me further in my business? Is this actually helping me meet the people that I need to meet? For him, it's not. And that's something that I don't think we've actually really heard very much, that you don't need that. You need something else. And
you know what this makes me think of is, I think everyone's going to need, at some point it's the need, define what success means to them. Because I think some of what you're describing is just well-meaning business owner A is going to them. They've defined success as maybe a certain size of a company.
Yeah.
And to business owner B, maybe they've defined success as a certain amount of profit and money they're making. And maybe to business owner C, they've described success as as much time off as they want. Are any of those definitions wrong? I don't think so.
No.
But are any of them universally applicable to everyone else's definition of success? I don't think so either. So some of what you said, just kind of like, yeah, how your husband may define success for him and his business venture and what he wants is not necessarily going to fit the mold of what A, B, or C well-meaning business owner thinks success means. It's very personal. And so that's kind of the main thing that makes me think of is just, if you only define success by what other people tell you that means, I think you're always going to be wondering what it is you're chasing and why.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that you can start to look down on yourself when your success to you looks different than what other people are saying, and you can think like, oh, I'm not doing it right.
Or am I defective?
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
am I the exception
Why
to the
don't I
rule?
want that? You know. But I think it is so important to really know why you're doing what you're doing and what you want to get out of it. And I also think it's good to try new things. I think it's okay to make some decisions in your first few years of being a business owner that you look back on and you think, maybe shouldn't have done that. But it's not a failure, it's a lesson. I really believe that, you know, maybe it costs you a bit of money, a bit of time, whatever it is, but if for the rest of your business career you never do it again, I think it's okay to be able to know, like, no, that's not what I need. Which also is something that I think is really important to tell business people, that it's okay to have a bit of failure, and it's okay to make the wrong decision. Whether it's a big one or a small one, I think it's just really important to learn as you go and not get too down on yourself. You can't go back and change it. You can't go back and, you know, not pay that money. You can't go back and not sign that contract, but what can you do going forward? I think is something really important that I've watched my husband actually tell. We have some other friends that have started businesses now, and that's something that he always shares with them. He's like, you're going to have a lot of little failures along the way, especially in the first few years, which he's still new to, and so he's right in it with them. He's not just telling them like sage advice, like, oh yes, you'll get it one day. You know, he's still learning as he goes, but that's something that I'm really proud of him for turning around and then saying to people. That's something that I don't think people really told him, like, it's okay to make those mistakes, but you just got to learn and keep going. And so I think that's what he's taken away from those things that he's learned too. So.
Well, more to your point, you wouldn't, and I'm sure you've heard this analogy for other reasons, but you wouldn't tell a little kid learning to walk, oh, you fell down once, I guess you're not meant to walk.
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't do that again.
Yeah. You're just going to crawl for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You weren't meant to walk.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to like, no, try again.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what did you learn from that one? And almost you're not having that kind of like depth conversation with your 8-month-old or 2-year-old or whatever, but the concept's the same.
Yeah.
Internally, they're processing what works when I try to walk and what doesn't, and I keep doing the things that do work until they find one that gets them to walk. And you don't get that way unless you're willing to take a couple stumbles or sometimes a lot of stumbles along the way. Yeah. So that learning from their failure kind of concept, or maybe even not even calling it failure. Yeah. I think that would be crucial. I think the topic we initially were doing for this third one was common misconceptions you had.
Yeah.
So if I could sum up what you've kind of alluded to, would be allowing other people to kind of define what success means for you. Or maybe the misconception is, here's what success means.
Yeah.
When to you, maybe that's actually not what it means. Yeah. I think one that comes to my mind a little bit is, I was going to mention this earlier, but maybe it's good that I didn't, was on the concept of having a boss. So one reason I find many people will start a business is they're tired of working for somebody else. They don't want a boss. Man, my boss is a jerk. I can only imagine how much freedom I'm going to have when I'm working for myself and I don't have a boss. I can get up when I want to. I can go to work when I want to. I can not go to work when I want to. I can take days off when I want to. Freedom, freedom, freedom. Sometimes what ends up happening is they actually go from having one boss to 50. And what I mean that is one of their clients becomes a boss to them, and they're not as free as they might think they are. And I think that's a common misconception that I see people have when they start their own businesses. Look how much freedom I'm going to have. And I think that can quickly disappoint.
And so do you think that there is no freedom in owning your own business, or do you think that you have to find that freedom a little bit, or you have to work for that freedom?
There's definitely freedom. One of the things I kept hearing when I was first starting out, people were like, I won't say getting mad at me, but almost like chastising me for taking vacation.
Oh.
Don't you run your own business? Yeah. I don't think you're supposed to take vacation when you run your own business. I don't think that's allowed. Like, aren't you worried what's going to happen to your business while you're not there? No, I employ good people. They look after things along the way. Okay, but I've been told you shouldn't take vacation where you're a business owner, right? Or if you're going to take vacation, it's a working vacation. You take your work laptop and you're going to be plugged in the whole time and answering texts and emails and whatever. And it's like, no, I take a vacation and I leave my work stuff at home. And I purposely ignore it for this 7 days or 10 days or whatever I'm away. And people are like, you really shouldn't do that. I'm like, it's not really a vacation if I don't do that. So no, I actually think freedom can be there. But I think you have to structure things in a way where you, like kind of you said, you create it. It's not going to just happen as the default action, especially if a lot of things you do are because well-meaning people tell you what you should be doing. But if you know how you're going to be, like how you're going to define your success, and you're comfortable with the time frame it might take to get there, I promise you that 7-day or 10-day vacation you take is not going to be the reason your company fails or doesn't fail. In fact, maybe not taking that time would possibly be worse. But what I am saying, I guess, is people have this idea that the freedom's going to come because they now work for themselves. But if you're not a very good boss, not everyone is. I'm really going to be like as candid as I can say about that. Not everybody was cut out to be the boss. And you might think, my boss is a jerk. I could do 100 times better than them. Well, that might be true that your boss was a jerk. But that's not necessarily true. You could do any better than them. And maybe you didn't realize that that boss who was a jerk was also the one helping you actually be productive. And when they were coming down hard on you, they might have actually been the reason you got stuff done. And when that pressure is off and you have the freedom to do whatever you want, you might find that you're not so good at that. Maybe you don't handle that well. And so, again, the concept of I don't have a boss anymore, so I'm free. Well, actually, you have 50 bosses. They're called your clients. And again, go back to something we talked about earlier, a different concept. Because you said yes to every single person that said they needed your services, guess what? About half the people you said yes to, they're way more demanding than that boss you thought you got rid of when you quit your job. They're way worse. So, no, I think that's a common misconception that I've seen that is probably worth being aware of when you start out.
And just, did you find that you were able to kind of set those boundaries right away when you started your own business, or do you feel like it took you a long time to get to that point?
I think one of the best things that ever happened to me was when I bought out another small accounting firm that had an office.
Okay.
Prior to that, I was working from home, and I know people rave about working from home. And during COVID, people they had no choice. And then after COVID, people oh, I'm kind of bummed. My boss wants me to go back to the office. I liked working from home. Nothing against that, but for me, I found that when my home environment was pretty much the exact same space as my work environment, it was really hard to ever feel fully present in either place. I might have a physical space that's called an office. I might have a door that closes and even locks. But if I've got kids that are, Dad, are you in there? Yeah. Dad, can I have a snack? Dad, do you want this? Yeah. I would find it hard working at home to actually be anywhere near as productive as I am when I got an office and they were completely distinct. And the other way was true as well. When I would go home, now when I go home, I completely disconnect. I'm like, that's a work problem, that's a tomorrow issue. But when my work and my home are the same place, it's like, well, it's 10 steps to go to my office and just deal with this issue. I know it's family game time, but I'll just miss a few turns and go do this, and that turns into 40 minutes, and you come back and you miss the game. That was one of the best things that ever happened to me, was getting into a spot where my work environment was a different physical space than my home environment.
And was that a conscious decision that you made, that you needed to get out of the house, or was that just sort of a happy byproduct of something?
It was a happy byproduct, and it took probably 1.5 years to get there, but it was one of the best things that could have ever happened. And ironically, this is one of the things I did not do well. The accountant that I took over from, I did not do my due diligence when I took over the client list. And I paid a whole lot of money for something that did really yielded almost zero productivity at the end of the day. And at first I was like, man, what a failure. But one of the best things that came out of that was an office. Yeah. And I did not realize how badly I needed that until that came around. So for me, that was my, well, this other thing sucked. You blew it, Corey, but you got this one thing out of it that you learned a valuable lesson. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, that totally. I've seen so many people go into business for themselves to leave a work environment where they work for someone else and do the same skill sort of in their own business, where they're not really aware of how much of their life it's gonna take over. But I like that it can change. That even if right now you're in that cycle of I work 24 hours a day and my life and work don't separate, there is something that can change that you can kind of create that distinction later on. It doesn't have to start right away.
Yeah, and maybe going along with that and kind of piggyback on what I said a moment ago, your average small business owner, especially one who's not really anxious to manage other people, they just kind of want to keep it themselves, might think, well, I don't need an office. I got a house. I don't need to pay for an office. 100% agree. But some of those people might find that having a space they have to drive to that's distinctly different from where they live could be a game changer. Even if they don't need it, even if they don't have employees that need an office, even if they don't have to meet clients anywhere, but just making that physical space so distinctly different can be a huge productivity increase.
I think that goes along with what we were saying about productivity, about being 100% here while you're here and 100% here when you're here. Yeah. And really helping to turn your mind one way or the other. Like your physical space is a huge indicator of what you should be doing. Yeah.
So maybe as we wrap up this last topic, the misconceptions about business, things that you maybe learned after you started that you wish you knew before, any other last things come to your mind? From what you've seen in your various positions, jobs, working with your husband in the carpet cleaning business, anything else that kind of comes to your mind?
I think one thing that I think is really important, sort of a misconception, is, how do I word this? The misconception of just trying to have as little expenses as possible. And by that I mean trying your best to not spend money on things, to maybe pay people as little as you can get away with for what they're doing, or because I need to save money or I need to make more money, and really trying your best to just whittle your expenses down. Something that I've found is knowing value and understanding what something is worth versus what you're paying for it. And it kind of goes along with like, well, if I just work 16 hours a day, then I get more work done. Like, well, no, it doesn't really work that way. And it's the same with, if I just pay less, then I'll make more money. But I think especially like when it comes to employees and employee satisfaction, when it comes to that space, like you said, like, well, I can do this from home for free, or you could pay a little bit and go to an office. And I think understanding the value of what you're paying for versus just the dollar amount that you're paying out is really important, to know that difference, and that the value actually might be a lot greater than maybe a larger expense might look on your books, but you're getting a lot more out of it. And in the end, you might make a lot more money by investing a little bit more in something that's a little bit more expensive, or maybe a person with a little bit more experience that you weren't expecting, or things like that.
There's a really funny, cool quote that I've heard that I've kind of adopted as a mantra now. It makes me think of the Disney movie Dumbo, but it's not intended to be. But the quote was, if you pay your employees peanuts, don't be surprised when all you attract is monkeys. Actually, I'm not sure if I said that right, but the concept is true. Like the value of paying your employees, if you decide to hire some well, and that's actually something that I have not done up until the last couple of years. I had not done that. I was like, I don't know if you're going to work out. I don't even know if I like you. I don't know if this is going to be a good fit. Minimum wage, and you get minimum wage, and you get minimum wage, and you all get minimum wage. And I thought, oh, well, I'm going to make so much more money because I have all these people working for me and they're making minimum wage. So I get more money left over at the end of the day. It was only over the last year or two that I really started to try and look at what I'm paying people. And even though it costs me more to pay them well, the productivity and the job satisfaction and just like the enjoyment out of working is so much more when your team loves to be there. And money is definitely not everything. There's lots of other things you can do to make employees love their job. But recognizing that it's probably worth paying somebody in their value of what they're worth as opposed to the cheapest you could get by 100% makes a huge difference.
It does. And like talking about going around fighting fires all day, if you are paying minimum wage and getting minimum wage people, is it a minimum wage expectation that you need, or do you need something higher? Because if it's something higher, then you're probably going to be fighting fires all day long, and your productivity is going to go down, and in the end, you're not going to be doing the things that you need to be doing, which is just going to bring everything down. So,
yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. Good point. So, as we wrap up, I want to do something that I did not tell you, because I actually didn't decide this until probably about 20 minutes ago. Okay. But so you can tell me no. Yeah. But since we're trying this out to see if this would work to kind of co-host this podcast together, spoiler alert, I'd be curious to let people kind of get to know you a little bit. Okay. And if you don't want to think about people, then just help me get to know you a little bit better. So if you can take like a minute or two and just sort of high level introduce yourself, and then maybe just spend some time, whether that ends up being 10 seconds or something much longer than that, on maybe why you want to do this podcast, or why the idea of this intrigues you, or kind of where you'd want to take it or add to it if this ends up working out. Yeah. If you don't mind, I think that would be really useful.
Sure. Yeah. So a little bit of background on me. I sorry, my voice is really at its end now.
So next time you hear Michelle, she's going to have a much higher voice.
I will not sound like this anymore. I have my Bachelor of Commerce degree from MacEwan University with a major in supply chain management. I have been managing for over 6 years now. I've been in warehousing with a couple major companies, and then most recently managing a local physiotherapy clinic. So totally different than before. And kind of in the midst of all that, I've been in various projects, whether it's large scale improvements, whether it's writing procedures for people, financials, sort of all throughout. I've seen many different facets of business. And then I also have helped my husband and other people run their own small businesses as well. So I've seen a lot of different aspects of business, and I've been able to learn a lot in my time. You learn a lot in university, but I think you really come to know it outside of it.
In the real
Even though
world.
there are still some concepts that come up that I'm like, oh, I remember that in class. It's not completely like totally different from the outside world, but I've learned so much in my time that I just want to share it with everybody. And that's something that I'm really excited to be able to share what I know, but I also know that I don't know everything. And that's something I've also come to know in my time, is that there are a lot of people that are experts in a lot of other things that I have no idea what to do. And I've learned that finding your team, finding resources around you to go to when you don't understand something is probably more important than knowing things yourself. And so being on this podcast, being able to meet people that are experts in things that maybe I have no idea how they work, or even things that I've seen a little bit, or things that I know a lot, I'm really excited to learn from other people and be able to help anyone watching learn something as well, and be able to take something away from it that they can implement in their own business or in their own lives, whatever that subject is. That, to me, I think we have so much to share with one another, and we don't always do it. We don't always, impart our wisdom, or we don't always think we have something important to say, but we do. We all have a lot that's important and can help other people. So I'm really excited to be able to do that through the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry I didn't give you a heads up, but I was like,
that's okay.
I was like, about 20 minutes ago, I was like, I don't know if I should even do that. And I was like, well, if this actually goes through, people might like to get to know who Michelle is. Yeah. You didn't mention this, and you can mention this another time, but you've got a couple kids and a family.
I totally only talked about business there. So I have a husband and I have 2 kids. I have a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old, a boy and a girl. I'm originally from Slave Lake, Alberta, so
really?
Up north.
Cool.
Yeah. I've lived in Edmonton on and off since I graduated high school, which is a few years now. So I should just start saying that I'm from Edmonton now, but I still am not quite there. I've bounced around Canada a little bit too in that time, so I've seen quite a few different places, but Edmonton's been mostly my home for my whole life now.
And when you were little, did you see yourself kind of doing what you do now for either a family life or a career? Did you ever see yourself potentially being on a podcast? Like, what did you want to be when you were little?
When I was little, I knew I was going to go into business. This is the weirdest thing. I was actually thinking about this recently. Like, I could not tell you the moment I decided that I was going to study business or get into business at all. It just always was where I was going to go. But when I started university, actually, I was going to go into international business because I really wanted to travel the world. I really wanted to be a big business person, making big deals and driving fancy cars and, the whole bit. That's what I pictured my life as. And I think maybe there was a family in there somewhere. I don't really know. I just pictured myself being really important in the business world, internationally. And, when I was in university, actually, that's where I came across supply chain management. It was super new at the time. McEwen was the only university, at least in Edmonton, obviously, and but I think in Alberta, that had that as a major. And I realized that was actually when I thought about how I pictured my life in international business, it was literally just traveling the world. There was no job aspect to it at all. I don't think I really knew what I meant by that, but then supply chain management, I was this is so logical, and it's so there's so many different aspects of business that you can be in from start to finish, of the whole supply chain of production, of logistics, of operations, just all of it. And that really called to me. So I ended up switching in university. And even along the way, I think every single job change I've had, my view of my life has changed with it. I don't know if I've really ever had a moment where I'm this is where I'm going to go and then I get there. I think it's just constantly evolving. But somewhere along the line, family became super important to me. And that I think has trumped all of it. And that's helped guide a lot of the decisions that I've made now. And it's, you know, when I picture my life, I picture my family first. And then I'm like, how can I make that happen for my family? And that's kind of how I then take my job, or that's how I make my decisions in my career, is how am I going to be able to get my family to where we want to be.
You know, when you were first telling me about what you said you wanted to do when you grew up, I wanted to do this because I just wanted to travel the world.
Yeah.
If I told my kids that, like, Dad, she wanted to be a YouTuber. That's what they probably would have said.
Well, when I was back in my day, that was not a paid career at all.
Nope, me neither.
That was not an option, but I don't think that I would really be cut out for that either. So
I think I have at least 2 of my kids who are still convinced that's what they want to do for a living. They want to be a
my
YouTuber.
husband wanted to be like a director or like movie editor. I don't know exactly what aspect, but he wanted to be in film. Now he owns a carpet cleaning business, so also very different for him.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes, and I appreciate you coming and doing this with me.
Thank you for having me here.
You've been listening to the Business Speak podcast featuring Mr. Chill. Be sure to subscribe and add us to your podcast library to ensure you never miss an episode. We love hearing from our listeners. If you have a topic or question you'd like us to discuss, would like to be a guest on our show, or would otherwise like to get in touch with us, please visit our website at businessspeak.ca. Thanks for listening to Business Speak, the language of business simplified.